Hello, everyone, and welcome to the show. Tonight, my guest is Mike Church, who's the founder of the Crusade channel. He has over 30 years in talk radio, 13 years with Sirius. Thank you so much for coming on.
You're very welcome. Thank you for inviting me.
I wanted to have you on because I find radio to be a really fascinating part of conservatism, because so many of our ideas in the conservative movement and Republican politics come from radio show hosts and from people that radio show hosts interview. So just to start off, how did you get involved in talk radio, and what was the talk radio climate like when you got involved?
Oh, Lordy, Miss Claudie. Well, I got involved in 1991, probably long before you were born.
Yes.
Long before many of our viewers were born. I was fascinated by what Limbaugh was doing. And I had never thought of myself as a political beast before until I heard Rush. Then I went, hey, wait a minute. I think I'm one of those conservative guys that he's talking about.
Yeah.
And there was a local radio station that was kind of doing a Limbaugh light. Actually, it was Limbaugh bad. But they did it all local all day long. And it was shoestring budget, low wattage AM. And they were calling out for helpers one day, or interns or volunteers, whatever you want to call it. So I decided to volunteer. And I went in and I volunteered, and I was working on one particular show. And I think I probably did that for a month or two. And I might have done a commercial or two, not a little bit of on-air work, not much, just kind of getting coffee, being an intern. But these guys were out of control, and they went way out of control. And the guy that owned a radio station one day had the police show up and tell them that he had gotten a restraining order against them, that they were locked out. And when I showed up, they were like, oh, Mike, you can come in. And the owner of the radio station was just like, I guess we'll just go all satellite Westwood One, I think at the time. And the program director, who was not insane, so he goes, why don't you give Mike a shot? He could do a show. And I'm like, dude. And we worked on the format and what have you, what we're going to call it, and did that for about 3 weeks. And then on April the 21st, 1992, we Thanos snapped it into existence. And we've been doing it pretty much ever since. I think I've been off air since 1992 for a grand total, all total of 6 months.
Wow. That's a lot of talk time.
It's a lot of talk. You're right.
And did you find at that time, obviously the Clintons were a big thing. You still had the first Bush involved in politics. They were sort of the two spheres of the American political system at the time. Was talk radio and radio in general, was it being viewed by candidates as a major machine to talk to voters, or was it still gaining some momentum?
I think it was the first thing that it did was canonize Ronald Reagan. So it tried to carry on. There was a lot of revolt and pushback. You got to remember at that time, people were not happy, conservatives. We're not happy with Pappy Bush. I wasn't happy with Pappy Bush. So when Patrick J. Buchanan decided he was going to run, he actually came to New Orleans, where I was working at the time, or volunteering, interning, or whatever. And I met Pat, and I supported Pat. I don't think that, because Limbaugh didn't have guests at that time, remember?
Right.
So I don't think it had kind of graduated to where it was a vehicle for political advancement outside of what Rush was doing. And I don't know if Newt ever gave him credit, but I'd give Rush at least, if you're a hockey fan, I'd give him at least an assist. And the 1994 takeover of the House from the Democrats. It wasn't until probably Fox News came on, 1997, I want to say. Talk radio kind of began to grow. Now, the irony is that it grew because this thing called the Fairness Doctrine was repealed. There's this just ridiculous piece of FCC largesse that had no purpose other than to try and make the top 50 radio markets and the big stations in them, bow down to some sort of rule that they couldn't have right wingers, but you wouldn't have had left wingers on at that time either. Look up, I'll give you a homework project, young lady. When we're done, look up Joe Pine.
Okay.
Pine. There are tapes of Joe Pine. That was talk radio in the 1960s, and he was probably responsible for the Fairness Doctrine. But after the Fairness Doctrine was repealed, the piece of legislation that really, in one moment, shot talk radio into the stratosphere, but
Mhm.
in the next moment, ultimately was its doom, was the Telecommunications Act of 1994. Radio will never recover. It's
Mhm.
completely dead. There is no bench. There's no local, unless there were holdovers from a long time ago. There's no one to teach them my beloved art of actual
Right.
radio broadcasting. I'm talking live. You don't get another
Yeah.
shot. You get one shot.
Right.
And if you mess it up, then hey, man, that's what people heard. And this is important to young people that want to get into broadcasting. So I challenge people all the time, people that I do shows like yours with, do it live. Do
Yeah.
it live. Don't give yourself, learn how to do it. Learn how to be part of that ongoing conversation, kind of. And that's the beauty of live radio. TV can't do what we can do in radio because
Right.
we don't have to have cameras on the spot. All we got to do is have one of these.
Right. And that's very interesting to me because there is a very small bench of people in young conservatism who can do radio, who can do YouTube videos. And I got involved about like 3 years ago. I didn't know how to do the jump cuts for YouTube videos or to do those kinds of things. So I didn't learn it in that system of you can just fix the mistake. Why do you think the bench of young conservatives or just young libertarians or anything for radio is so small? And yet on the left, you have a never ending crop of new people who want to do podcasts or broadcasts.
Well, I'm one of these old curmudgeons, so I divide people into two camps, maybe three camps. I don't know, depending on what day, maybe it's four. The first camp is the live actual broadcast to an actual audience over actual airwaves.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the answer to your first question is where's a young person going to go? You got to remember that Barack Hussein Obama, Franklin Delano Obama, as I call him, Obama slaughtered the media internship program. He killed it. It was part of one of those acts that got passed in 2009 or 2010. They basically made it illegal to have interns come in and work for less than minimum wage. So radio and TV stations, while consolidation was going on, that's the thing the Telecommunications Act killed. All your little mom and pops are put out of business. Where's someone like you going to go? Where are you going to go to get experience? There's
Right.
no, you can't go and volunteer to be an intern. It's illegal in most places. They won't let you. I dare say, and it's not a critique on you or anyone else, that you have enough talent to actually be thrust into a 50,000 watt transmitter facility
That's
to
true.
go live in front of 150,000 people, depending on what time of day it is.
Right.
So it's a real tragedy, which is why here on with the little outpost that we have on the Crusade channel, which most people do not know exists, but it has been live and on since November the 10th, 2015. I think we've been on air a total of 16 hours, and that was because a server that we had nothing to do with went down, and they couldn't get it restarted. We teach that here. Now, on the left, I go to the same. So let me get to the second category. People that are doing podcasts, ultimately, you'll note there's a very small group of people way at the top.
Yes.
And that's probably because they have a big name prior, or they had some previous affiliation with someone or some group. If you actually listen to them or watch them, they're really not that good. If they didn't have this kind of built-in audience, then they would absolutely stink the joint up and no one would ever listen to them.
Right.
I don't think that the left has that many more. And I don't think that, well, and the reason the libertarians are because it's free. It doesn't cost anything. And all I have to do is like have my like private property rights, man. And you know, I earn my little airways on my podcast. So like, yeah, we're going to talk about like economics today and my favorite, like Austrian, absolute bore fest. Again, I think thoughtful podcasting has a place. I'll give you an example. Cheryl Atkinson.
Yeah.
She puts time and
Yeah.
thought and prep, and she's a pro. She did live news anchoring. She knows what she's doing.
Right.
That to me is an example of a good, thoughtful, productive podcast. I think the rest of them, though, Magdalene, I think that you're in it for 6 months. I can't make any money doing this.
Right. So that
I
they're
gotta go back to
leaving.
work. I'm going to
Yeah.
quit. So again, I think I think where the rubber needs to meet the road again. And I was so excited when you asked me. I said I get to talk to some young people. Good. Get out there and come join us, or find someone who's doing what we're doing somewhere that is actually doing radio, or
Right.
maybe you can find live TV somewhere. I don't. Maybe you can get internships I think they still have some
Some,
at
yeah.
television stations. But to me, it's important for young people, and this is a vocation, it's a calling. You know, as Catholics, we have calling.
Yes.
My calling is to do this. I don't make any money doing this anymore. I mean, I make enough to survive. I really don't care. I care about people like you and Richard Barrett and Chris Lawrence and others. I want them to learn the vocation, want them to learn the trade. I want them to come sit in this chair when I'm done or give me a couple of months a year off.
Right. Yeah. And I think that that's a very interesting point, because even when you want to learn things in the conservative movement, it's really difficult to find anyone to teach you anything. I've been on like a mentor hunt for like 3 years. I've kind of given up now, because you can't, there's no consistency in what you're looking for, especially because of how quickly people's positions and sides are changing. Now that we're sort of in the preamble to the midterms. In the last election cycle, it kind of seemed like the Trump campaign was not focusing as much on radio as they did in 2016. I remember Trump was all over radio stations, or he had his surrogates, or Mike Pence was out there. This time in 2020, there seemed to be a move away from that. Did you see that? And if you did, why do you think it occurred?
I didn't notice that he was. I think in the first go around of radio. Now you got to remember. Okay, you got time for a story? Let me give you a quick story. When I was on Sirius XM, and I helped build that platform. When I started in 2000 and 2001, there was no talk radio. I did the talk radio on Sirius XM. So by the time we get to the merger, because it was just Sirius and then XM, people forget there's two completely separate entities. By the time we get to the merger in 2008, 2009, I finally get on Sirius and XM. I started doing mornings. And in about 2010, I think, the Patriot Channel made a deal with Breitbart. Andy Breitbart was still alive. Breitbart News was a part of the weekend programming. And before Breitbart came along, I used to get to pick my fill-in host. At about a year or two in, maybe 2012, 2013, that stopped. And guess who all of a sudden became my fill-in host? 3 guesses, and the first 2 don't count. Stephen K. Bannon.
Ah, yes.
Bannon was there, and then and Bannon was gunning for my position ever since. He knows it, and I know it. I'm not bitter about it. I'm glad it happened. I'm glad I'm here and not there. But when they moved me out, Steve Bannon took Mike Church's audience that I took 13 years to build.
Yeah.
This is the reason. Now you go back and look. Bannon was on, Trump was on a lot of Steve Bannon shows on Sirius XM.
Right. Yes.
Because that had national coverage and 20 million subscribers. So that was a big part of his radio. I think he might have called into Rush a time or two.
Yeah.
He's big buddies with Hannity because he was always on. I can remember hearing him when I used to listen to Sean before I got Sense. Back in the day, Sean used to have Donald J. Trump of Manhattan on his show. So did Lionel and some of your other radio names that you would recognize. I know Don Imus had President Trump on, so I think he had a built-in radio thing already. But I think as he became president, especially with Russia's health problems, and again, what you and I talked to, talk radio's on a descent.
Right.
Live talk radio's on a descent. There's not a lot of places for President Trump to go. Right. And I think you had the rising stars of One Side Broadcasting or Right Side Broadcasting.
Right.
You had One American News, and you had Newsmax, and you had the Ben Father, whatever the Ben Father was doing or is doing. So you had some television outlets for President Trump to go on that were more favorable to him, and that's maybe why he didn't do as much radio.
So he shifted away.
I think he shifted away because his people were telling him that there was no gold to be found, that there was that there wasn't enough audience there, and they would be wasting their time.
And do you disagree with that? Do you think there was enough audience there? Because I do think there is something about radio that is easier for more people to connect with than going and switching on a channel every day or whenever they're home.
I completely disagree with that, and I completely think that now, first of all, he's President Trump to me, 45 on his second term. He won the election. The amount of votes that came in, all this chicanery that happened afterwards, I and many others will never accept that regime leader Biden, as I call him, won. So to me, they made the right campaign choices. Okay, let's not talk about campaign choices though. let's talk about what's good for his MAGA America.
For them, yeah,
He
for
could have brought
conservative
millions
movement.
and tens of millions of people to local radio stations. Now, I think
Right.
he did a few. I
He
don't
did a
think he
few.
completely was out because I think I remember hearing some of them. But in any radio market that he went campaigned in, when he went to Atlanta, when he went to any of those cities in the Midwest, in Pennsylvania, if there were any small radio stations, not only would a host have been thrilled, it would have been the highlight of their life
Yes. Yeah.
to get 10 minutes with President Trump. It'd have
Right.
been good for radio and it'd been good for local radio. And I'm all about local, local, local. So I
Yes.
think it was a mistake.
And for, looking back at like the 2012 race, I think Mitt Romney ran a very bad campaign. I think Mitt Romney's people even admit to that now on some level. And there was always a focus on where can we get Mitt so people can see him? Where can we get Paul Ryan so people can hear him talk but see him first? Do you think that this move away from radio, aside from what happened with Trump, do you think that it started with the Mitt Romney campaign? Because there seemed to be sort of some ingrained elitism in how they ran their media operations that was obvious to me as a young person, but I imagine was even more obvious to people in the network of people at the time.
Well, again, I think that the Telecommunications Act did the most damage. The
Mm-hmm.
Telecom Act killed more local radio stations than you can imagine. When I say it killed, they're still on the air, making noise. Well, they're still on the air, but it's all canned, satellite-driven, voice-tracked, as we call it, garbage.
Right.
They killed the local. There used to be again a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. A group did a video called "Video Killed the Radio
Oh,
Star."
my mom was just talking about that when I said I was going to interview you. She just said that to me. Yes.
Well, video did kill the radio star. And it's difficult. Radio. This is another thing about people want to be on TV. I don't care.
Right.
I try to dress nice because I am on TV every day. I care about the way we appear. I don't care. It makes no difference to me. Are we making a difference in someone's life?
Right.
That's and making a difference in someone's life in pursuit and defense of the good, the true, and the beautiful.
Right.
Can someone go back and show me you were wrong, you lied, and I'll never listen? You can't go back. And this is another thing that young people need to know, and they need leaders. You're searching for a mentor. I'll volunteer.
Lovely.
Tell the truth.
Yeah.
Defend the truth. Even if it makes you look, people like Donald John Trump don't become leaders because they're always popular in everything that they do. Become leaders because they make decisions, most of them good decisions, and people follow them. Another thing about President Trump that people discounted completely when he was running for the presidency, this guy built up an empire in I can't remember, 60 some odd languages with hotels all around the world, golf courses, rental properties. His children looked up to him. This was not a Disney dad, as they say. This was a good,
Right.
tight-knit family, and they were good at what they did. That said an awful lot about Trump Inc. to me. I was a fan of Trump when he was just Donald Trump, the entrepreneur back in the 1980s. But getting back to the radio question and Romney, I think Romney was the worst candidate in the history of the Republican Party. I think he still is the worst possible candidate or the worst possible excuse for a United States senator. Talk about someone, okay, if you want to look at our political system and see everything that's wrong with it, look in Utah and look at who gets elected. Now, I don't know about Mike Lee, but I do know that Harry Reid before Romney, and I can't remember the other the senators. You're electing people to the United States Senate based completely and solely upon how much they can invest in a campaign.
Yeah.
This is an absolute it's a disaster for the political process, and it has been. And I don't remember Romney doing an awful lot of radio because radio would be beneath the Mittster.
That's the feeling. Yes, that's what I always felt, that he was sort of above it all. Like he was just going to go to the debates and the town halls, and that was going to be the ceiling of it. And I wondered, because obviously now we're seeing which issues are going to be the most dominant going into midterms. There's going to be a lot about, I think, energy. People are very upset about that. The economy, a lot of things with the military. Do you think that talk radio or radio in general can still shape the direction that the Republican Party goes in with policy? Because Rush did that, other Titans did that, but now it seems like it's more being shaped by influencers rather than people who are talking to people in different states and voters in different areas.
I think that talk radio can be influential again in local circles. And I think that the future lies not in this national blobistan, as I call it. I think the future lies in getting things back into scale. There are great books and great works that have been written out there about how far out of scale all this is. I'll give you an example. If the representation that we had in the United States Congress of 1910, the 1920 census, the 1910 census was the last time they changed the number of seats in the HOR, 435. By act of Congress, they locked it in, and they never went back to the population again. If they went back to the population, you know how many members of Congress we'd have? 7,800 and change. True story. You'd have 7,800. So that puts into perspective just how far out of scale this thing is.
Yeah.
So I'm not one that's I do federal stuff every day because people want to hear it. Will radio have a role in it? Unfortunately, Magdalene, again, the Telecom Act and now the economy is going to, and now the Biden regime is going to put the kibosh, and people are going to be, and the woke and cancel culture, people are terrified to say and do the right thing. I would not expect, outside of some very brave souls at medium city size level, markets in the mid 20s to maybe up to 100. So maybe 60, 75 markets total, where there are some radio stations left that still have live talk radio, where they can actually get into local politics. And I'll tell you, one of the biggest ones is going to be, even though they keep saying that it's not, children. When I say children, I mean all of this nonsense, this diabolical, demonic nonsense that's going on with the changing of genders and all this. If the Republican Party wants an issue that every mom and dad and every person that has an attachment and a love for a niece or a nephew, they want an issue that they could sink their teeth into, that puts you on the right side of the good, true, and the beautiful, and the right side of God as well. Defend gender, and stop with the concern about what if somebody gets offended. People have been offended since Noah. Get over it. Sometimes people get offended because they're doing the wrong thing, and you're telling them that they're doing the wrong thing. There are issues, I believe. I don't think that the economic issue works anymore, Magdalene, and I'll tell you why. You got an administration or a regime that's going to spend $12 trillion this year. Yeah. They don't even care. They're not even doing appropriations anymore.
Yeah.
What is the economic angle to defend? What are you going to defend the debt? You're a young woman, you get to pay this back. Yeah. I'm a geezer. I have daughters your age. Y'all get to pay this back. I talk about this every day on my show. This is a crime. But if that's not going to be an issue, and I don't see any Republican that stepped up to the plate, well, then it seems to me that there is an entire canyon there can be filled with defense of the children. Defend the innocence of the children. When I was a 9-year-old's age, I was worried about, my biggest concerns was I going to get to leave the yard to go play down the street? And if I wasn't going to get to the yard, was my mom or my dad going to let me play with this toy? It was not considering the RNA and DNA makeup that I was blessed with and whether or not God had gotten it right. This is absolute madness. And we need leaders. We need good, sound, sane individuals, the real men, to step up and stop worrying about what people think and say what needs to be said. Could the Republican Party do, the GOP do that? I think, but I'll give you one more thing on that election that's coming up. Why does anyone think that the Stacey Abrams, or Stacey Slobrams, as I call her, why does anyone think that the Abrams gang is not going to do what they just finished doing? Why would they give the House up? All they got to do is just pull the trigger on what they've already done. You might have noticed that the courts keep siding with the precedent now of mail-in ballots and mail-in voting. I don't know that the law gets changed to the degree that you actually have an accurate and fair accounting of votes again. So I don't know why people are putting confidence we're getting excited. Maybe that's the point. Get people excited about it, only to let them down and crush them down one more time and tell them that they will obey their federal overlords. I don't have any confidence that this will be a free and fair and safe election. None whatsoever. As a matter of fact, I really, quite frankly, other than my local races where I might have a chance to actually have my little tick box count, I don't want to say I don't care, because I do care. I have no interest in participating in it, and I'm not alone.
I know I've heard that from many people who've had some candidates on to talk about their runs, people in real competitive seats who have a chance, and they're hearing from voters that the number one issue for them is really whether or not any of it counts anymore, and that's something that is becoming more and more dominant within the conservative movement. And you've created your own station now. You have people who are on your station with you. How did that come to be? How did you decide to make the investment in creating your own station so that you would have at least freedom or control over what you were doing?
So it all began in 2009, 2008, actually. So we started, of course, I'm not prepared for this. We started making movies. We made a movie called it's an audio movie, but we made it for Sirius XM. They broadcast it on the 4th of July all day long, 24 hours. It's called The Road to Independence. It was telling of the real story of the Declaration of Independence, how it came about, what have you. I wrote, produced, directed, and voiced it, and we had a bunch of people that actually participated in it. After that, we made 7 more, and they were really very successful. And people were very excited about the fact that that kind of media was being made. So on holidays, Memorial Day weekend, 4th of July holiday, whenever it fell, Labor Day weekend, then I think maybe on Constitution Day, 5-6 times a year, I figured out how to broadcast the audio recordings to this new thing called streaming audio and streaming radio. And so we were doing this in 2009.
Yeah.
And it wasn't called the Crusade Channel. It was called Founding Father Films Radio. And so in order to do that, we had to have the hardware and had to learn how to do it and learn the audio configuration all around it here. And we did. And we continued to do that until like, I don't know, around 2013 or so. And then we began to do a teaching course on Catholic Thomistic philosophy with Brother Andre Marie. And every Wednesday night, we had that little niche card. I was still on Sirius XM at the time, and we would broadcast that. And we had a chat room, which has become very popular. So people could ask questions of the teacher. And so we did that. And then when Sirius XM gave me, when I became too Catholic for satellite radio, and I got my Sirius XM Christmas bonus in 2015, which was freedom, or how does Ted Cruz say it? I won't do it. We already had the pieces in place. And I had thought for 3 years, I'm like, I'm having Chris Ferrara on, I'm having Brother Andre Marie on, I'm having these priests on. The people that were running the Catholic channel on Sirius XM were complaining. I was getting hate mail from internal. Why are you doing things that the Catholic channel ought to be doing? I said, maybe you ought to ask the Catholic channel that question. I knew it was coming. So we had prepared for it. I had no idea it was going to be called the Crusade Channel. Just kind of happened. Yeah. But it has become a crusade. And I obviously was the first show that was on it. I think in total, we've had 11 or 12 live shows now. And I'd say one of my proudest accomplishments in Sirius, not only in surviving 5 years as a subscriber service and doing that live radio every day, is bringing a fresh young talent like a Richard Barrett in, who knew absolutely nothing about broadcasting, and today sounds like he does.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, no, it's good. He interviews you from time to time.
It's fantastic.
As a matter of fact, whenever he says he's going to interview you, I always make sure that I listen, because I enjoy your conversation with him.
Thank you.
And I always tell him, I'm like, she gets it. She's smart. She does her actual prep. She knows what she's talking about. We have a show that's broadcast live from London now. And that's the Fiorella Files, bringing book radio back, which people abandoned, and people love it. They love hearing the book reviews. We have a Brother Andre Marie, who I mentioned. We have a show that's on right now, opposite me. There's 2 guys in there, Joe and Joe from New Jersey. They were very excited about it. As long as you have energy and you have the willingness to do it, we could teach you how to do it.
Yeah.
So that's good. And the idea of the Crusade Channel has been defend the good, the true, and the beautiful. and do it in an entertaining. And one of my old bosses, Sean Hannity, and I worked at the same radio station at about the same years in our careers. And that's 770 WVNM. Sean was there for 2 years. I was there for a year, about 2 years after him. And Bill Donovan was the owner of that station. That man told me something I'd never forgotten. You kiddies out there remember this. I don't care what you talk about. Don't matter to me what you talk about. Don't care if you're liberal, conservative. Actually, I do care. I don't like liberals. But I just want you to get on my radio station and give me 2 hours. Come on, darn it. I want 2 hours of compelling radio.
Yeah.
I want you to make me want to listen. Make it compelling radio.
Yeah.
And I never forgot that. And that's pretty much our mantra on the Crusade channel.
Yeah.
Can you defend the good, true, and the beautiful? You want to be a personality, and can you make it compelling? And if you can do that, well, then you should be on live radio. You should be on the Crusade channel, or you should be somewhere else, and you should be doing it. So that's how it came about. And we consecrated the station to Our Lady of Walsingham in summer of 2018.
Mm-hmm.
And she has been our patroness and our queen ever since. And she sits right here. So we're blessed. I tell people, just give it up, man. Just ask her to help you. This is better than any trophy you'll ever carry around. Yeah. And we're blessed to do what we do every day. And that's the story. Most of it happened by necessity.
Right. Yeah.
Not by planning.
Yeah, I think that's one of the best times things can happen, when you have to, like, I had to make a change to a different network, and that was the best choice out of necessity. Just sort of in closing, what would be your advice to young people in conservatism, because there is such a mentorship and guidance gap, who want to learn the foundations of radio and want to learn how to connect with people that they're interviewing? Because that's something I hear a lot as well. People don't know how to connect in interviews.
Well, know your subject.
Mm-hmm.
Who was know thyself? I forget who that was. Is that anyway? Know your subject, and then be excited about your subject. So whoever you're blessed to interview, if you wanted to make it come off, I taught my daughters. I have twin girls who were 23 now, or 24. I taught my girls who have both gone out into the world, even though I wish I could take that mistake back. Don't meet strangers. Mm-hmm. Love people. So love their story. If you don't meet a stranger and you know your subject, and don't worry about these sheets that they send out. They say, oh, you should ask him this question about the bull darky. Know the subject, have a little bit of a passion about it, and don't meet a stranger. And don't treat people like they're strangers. Ask them, how would you like me to pronounce your name?
Yeah. Yes.
Tell me, I often wind up interviewing people that and asking them questions that they have no idea are coming. Like, I saw that, you were here and there in 2016. Well, how did you do that? I thought that was very interesting. Mm-hmm. And most people will brighten up. They're like, oh, you know a little bit about me. So know your subject, have a passion for it, and when you're in radio and you're behind one of these, it also helps to have a good partner in crime, a good producer. And if you have a good producer, great. If you don't, if you got to produce yourself, remember that, your goal is, or the goal of the producer is, I want my host to sound like he is Limbaugh. I want him to sound like he is Paul Harvey. Good day. I want him to sound like he knows what he's doing. So prep, and over prep.
Yes.
Most people don't, they think that, show prep is, going through encyclopedias and stuff. Show prep is talking to you.
Yeah.
Show prep is maybe going on Twitter and hanging out for 10 minutes and going like, oh, well, that's pretty stupid. Yeah. Or maybe in the opposite, going like, well, that's pretty cool. Show prep never ends. This is why these things are vocations. Yeah. Anyone that's in it for the money, you're going to be able to see through it. They'll do things that will help you to see through it. I'll give you one example. Recently here, this is not a knock. It's an observation. And I told you people this was going to happen. I call her Release the McEnany. And I told you, I said, I watch very carefully these people. I listen to what they say. She doesn't really think any of that. That's not her saying that. She's defending the president.
Yeah.
They have meetings, and she knows what she was doing. She was really good at it.
Yeah.
Didn't necessarily mean that that was her speaking.
Right.
She was really good at defending what Trump sent her out there
Yes.
to defend.
She
But
was.
at the end of the day, she did start at CNN, and at the end of the day, she was taught by the same libtards that are filling the current generation's head up with all kind of mush. My advice, final word, final advice: work hard.
Yeah.
Work very hard at this, and be as independent as you can. And I make Richard. I'm not trying to embarrass Richard. I love you, buddy. I make Barrett. I make others. When I hear something, I go, "Oh, dude, don't do that." When I hear it on air, and I go, "Oh, I do what was done to me. Here's a tape of what you just did. Listen to it."
Yes.
When you're your own worst critic, don't listen to anyone who goes, "You're so great, you did whatever." Be your own worst critic. Watch
Yeah.
your tapes or listen to your tapes. Listen for things that you can improve on. I mean, don't beat yourself up, but always be looking to move that ball down the road. You can do better. You can do better. You can do it. I do it every day.
Yeah.
This morning, I listened to a tape
Yeah.
because I was doing my prep, and we have it playing in the background, and I don't turn it off. And I'll hear something, and I'll kick myself every day and go like, "Oh, you idiot! Why did you say that?" But then also, Magdalene, it kind of keeps us grounded and humble.
Yes. Yes.
And I don't think people that stand still are going to be very good at anything, to tell you the truth.
Yeah.
So anyone that's resting on their laurels or saying that, well, I did this and I'm the mighty Joe Rogan or whatever. Okay, dude, whatever.
Yeah.
You're probably not getting any better, and that's a shame for you and for your audience.
Yes.
So that's my advice.
And it definitely takes a while to build it up, because it took about 3 years to get to a place where I knew how to do show prep and I knew how to do those things. So it's definitely a very long journey, especially in conservatism, because so many things change on a day-to-day basis. Thank you so much for coming on. Where can people follow you on social media or online?
Well, if they want to follow me on the Twitter, good luck seeing anything I tweet, because I'm one of the most shadow banned people in the history of Earth. I am at the King Dude, one word, TheKingDude, at the King Dude. Follow me on the Crusade Channel site. We're on every morning for 4 hours a day. 4 hours a day, beginning at 6 a.m. Central to 10. And then, look, I'm doing a 5th hour today. But I'm loving every minute of it.
Perfect.
So, yeah, at crusadechannel.com, I have my own website, and that is mikechurch.com, which we update every day. You can find my films. They're not at Amazon. I don't do business with Amazon anymore. They're evil. All of my films are in my store. There's 7 of them now. So there's ample ways to get in touch. My Proton Mail account, my email account is iamkingdude@protonmail.com. And I'd love to hear from you and from your listeners. And just one final word on that preparatory thing. Remember, when you have a vocation, who it is that gave it to you.
Mm-hmm.
Don't ever cross him. Always keep this: God's rights and God's law. I didn't learn this until 6-7 years ago, and I thank the Lord every day that I did. Always keep His rights and what would be pleasing to Him in front of you. That's not to say you got to run off and become a Jimmy Swaggart or anything. Or some televangelist. Don't misunderstand. You can say things including watch your mouth, watch your language. You can say and do things that are for the honor and glory of God, and that keep things in the proper order. And remember, no government is ever above Him. And I think this is where conservatism fails the most.
Yeah.
Put the order back. Let's reestablish that. And I think we had it, but we didn't have it written. But I think in the United States we had it, and especially in the South, we certainly had it. Let's reverse that order. Let's get that order back. The state doesn't tell the church what to do. The church tells the state. When they're in conflict, the church tells the state. Remember that, kiddies. Always, always, God is always in charge. As a priest friend of mine likes to say, God's in charge and He knows what He's doing. I think we should just let Him do it.
Yeah. I think that's very interesting. I think our viewers will enjoy hearing that. Thank you so much for coming on.
My pleasure. Thank you, Magdalene. And you keep up the good work. And I will be expecting to hear from you, young lady.
I guarantee it.